And the next thing I know, I'm waking up in post-op. And what they told me was that they had ruptured my uterus in multiple places and missed my artery by a millimeter.
Oh my God.
So my 45-minute procedure turned into an emergency surgery that lasted hours, but I literally survived it by a millimeter.
Wow. That's some Donald Trump stuff right there.
Yeah, right?
We got Michelle Clare here today. We're going to talk about a lot. Near-death experiences, afterlife, all that. Thanks for coming on.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, when I saw your story, I was really fascinated because it's rare to have one near-death experience, but you had 3, right?
Right, absolutely. And they were all very unique and distinct from each other. So that's the other thing. A lot of times we think if you have one, it's just going to be the same, right? Groundhog's Day every time. Mine were completely different each time. And the reason I transitioned was different each time.
Right. And you're able to remember kind of what happened on the other side, right?
Absolutely. It's more vivid than it is here.
Wow.
Yeah. So whenever people come back and they're talking about having near-death experiences, very often we hear them use the phrase, it's more real than this. And it's because the colors are more real. It is almost burned in your soul, is what I would say, the vividness of it and that remembering of being home. So a lot of experiencers call it home.
Interesting. So walk me through that first one. What happened?
Yeah, so the first one happened in April of 2000. And at that point in time, I was newly married. I didn't have any kids, but I was visiting my sister-in-law in the hospital because she had had a baby that day. And so I was out in the hallway talking to her RN, who happened to be my friend. And I have this massive seizure. And what I know, I don't remember the seizure. I remember talking to my friend, and then I'm opening my eyes, and I'm in this white room, laying with my head in my grandma's lap, and my grandma had passed a couple years before that. And as I look around, the walls are alive. They are almost breathing, and yet they seem solid, and they're all white. And I look at my grandma, and she is the youngest, brightest, healthiest version of herself that I could remember. And while I'm looking at her, I noticed standing next to her is this 12-foot tall angel. So I had been raised Catholic. I always believed in angels and all of that, but I had no idea they were so immense. And as I looked up at her, the first thing I wanted to see were her feather wings. And what I noticed is they were actually made of light. They weren't made of feathers as we would see them. And they were iridescent, translucent, kind of reminded me of the aurora borealis, the way that they would move. And I remember thinking to myself, what is your name? And she actually answered me in my head. She said her name was Madeline and that she was one of my guardian angels. So at that point in my life, I didn't know anything about near-death experiences or telepathic communication. But the next thing I know, I'm in this blissful, timeless space, just enjoying it, not wanting to leave. And I hear someone yelling, code, code, code. And I'm back in my body. So because I was already in the hospital and had quit breathing, they called the code team. And at that point in time, it felt like I got dropped out of a tall building into this very dense, heavy energy. My arm felt like it weighed 500 pounds. And I knew that I had had this experience with something beyond anything I had known.
Holy crap. So your heart stopped.
I stopped breathing completely. Yes, they were calling the code team because of the seizure.
Wow. And have you had a seizure before that?
I've never had one before, and I've never had one since.
Holy crap.
I know. They admitted me to the hospital. They couldn't figure out what caused it. And I really think in hindsight, that was my awakening to the angelic realm and to the fact that it's real and it's here. And what I like to tell people is my grandma and my guardian angel, they knew I was coming. I had no idea that I was about to have this experience, and yet they were both waiting. There was so much love and compassion for me.
That's beautiful. Was your grandma pretty spiritual too?
She was very Catholic, so not spiritual, very Catholic.
Got it. Did you look into that angel, Madeline, and see if there's any meaning behind that one?
I haven't looked into her name, but I feel her presence around me a lot. And you're right, I should look into her name and see if there's a meaning with that also. But what I know now as a medium is that we're all assigned guardian angels before we come into this earthly realm. Some of us have 1, some of us have 3, 8, 10, but we always have at least 1. And that was my first awakening to her and the fact that the angelic realm is so real and vivid.
That's so cool. So what do you think the point of these angels are?
So what I've come to learn is that they're really here to protect us. It's different than a life guide. A life guide is here to help us keep on track with our soul's plan, but an angel is really here. It's the near-miss car accident. It's You know, those type of situations where something felt off and then you see someone coming that you weren't expecting in a good way, they're really here to help protect and love and guide us in those ways.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then how long after that was the next near-death experience?
So the next one happened in May of 2006, so about 6 years later. And it was after I had had my youngest son. So at that point in time, I had 3 little kids, 5, 2.5, and an infant. And after I had him, I had had a lot of complications. So I was in the hospital about 4 out of 6 weeks.
Jeez.
And finally they said, we're going to need to do a DNC. That's a procedure where they clear out your uterus, clean it out. And then they said, it'll be 45 minutes outpatient procedure. You'll be fine. And you'll go home and be good. And so I thought, okay, that sounds easy, right? Easy being the key word there. The night before, I had a pit in my stomach, and I literally felt like I shouldn't do that, but I was so tired of being in the hospital. So I went in the next morning. I had had anesthesia before, and whenever I've had it, it's just a blank. There's no dreaming, there's no memories, nothing. So I remember counting backwards for the anesthesiologist, and I'm getting rolled into the operating room. The next thing I know, I look over, and my beautiful 102-pound white German Shepherd, who had passed a couple years before, is walking into the operating room, and we are gone.
Whoa.
And we are on this phenomenal beach. There are colors there that we don't have here, sounds, smells, emotions. Everything is filled with this light and unconditional love, and it radiates it. So every leaf, every drop of water, every molecule, everywhere. And it was so blissful and timeless. And so she and I are running on the beach, and she looks like she's about 2 years old. Her coat is shining, she's healthy. We're telepathically communicating again. I know that she's happy that I'm there, and we're just almost blending energy. And after we've been running and running, I start to notice that the sand feels like clouds. I don't feel like I'm running on beach sand. And the funny thing about this is I actually hate to run, so I will tell people, like, call 911 if you see me running. Here I am in my near-death experience with my dog, right? And it was so blissful. But while I'm on the beach with her, I can feel my son, who's 6 weeks old at that time, and back at the house with my mom, calling to me because he knows I'm getting ready to leave. His soul can feel that my soul is getting ready to go back home. And I remember going to him, and I remember saying to him, I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to find a way to stay. And I just start praying, and I start saying, I need help. It's not my time. My kids still need me. And in that moment, I am back in the operating room. Jesus walks in, but Jesus walks in as like your best friend, not bow down to me or pray to me. Jesus walks in, the operating room lights up with this white golden light, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up in post-op. And what they told me was that they had ruptured my uterus in multiple places and missed my artery by 1 millimeter.
Oh my God.
So my 45-minute procedure turned into an emergency surgery that lasted hours, but I literally survived it by 1 millimeter.
Wow. That's some Donald Trump stuff right there.
Yeah, right?
I saw his was like 5 millimeters, right?
Yes.
With the shot.
Right? And isn't that amazing? Here on Earth, 1 millimeter is the difference between life and death so often.
Yeah. And he seems to be going through an awakening right now.
I would agree with that. His energy's changed.
Yeah, his speech
shifted.
last night was different.
Yeah. Yeah, which is really what we need with humanity. We need somebody to lead us from the heart, not from the head as much.
Wow, that is insane. And then you had a third one.
Yes, because 2 weren't enough, I guess, right? So my third one happened on November 1st, 2011. And that's for people who like ones. There's a lot of ones in that number. I have 14-foot ceilings in my house and about 12 feet off the ground. I have battery-operated candles. So I was changing the batteries. My younger 2 kids were home. So my kids at that time were 5, 8, and 10. And I said to the younger 2 kids, when I get done, we're going to go get your sister from school. So I started climbing up to the top of the ladder. And as I get towards the top, I can feel that it's starting to shift. And I literally thought, this is going to hurt. And the next thing I know, I am ripped out of my body. Not in a painful way, but think bungee cord fast, like whoosh, sucked out. I am standing with 3 people I've never met before, an Asian man, a Hawaiian man, and an Egyptian woman. They felt like family or friends. I felt like that I had known them forever. And I'm turned around, and I'm facing my body and the ladder suspended in the air. It's like a freeze frame in a movie.
Wow.
And as I'm standing there and I'm in this unconditional love, this timeless place again, they said to me, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay or do you want to go? And I remember just thinking, I have forever to decide. And it didn't make sense to me because I knew my body was going to hit the floor in about a second. So with that happening, I saw my younger two kids. And the minute that I saw them, I knew I needed to stay. Before I made that decision, though, this other angel came in dressed in red and gold. And when I saw this angel, I knew it was there to either take me home, to that heavenly realm or shift something so that I could stay. So as I make this decision to stay, I'm downloaded with a bunch of information from Source, God, the divine. And the information is, okay, Michelle, but now you've got to go back. You've got to do your mediumship. You've got to help people in the way that you can help them. Your marriage is most likely going to end in divorce. There's going to be more trauma ahead. And I literally remember standing in that spirit realm saying, okay, send me back in. Even though they had given me this warning of what was coming. But when we're in that heavenly realm, we realize that this life is just a short period of time and that death is an illusion. And so we're saying, okay, send me in. I'll play that game for now. And so I come back into my body. I did fall off the ladder. I hit the back of my head on the corner of the granite island in my kitchen.
Ooh.
So I had a 5.5-inch skull fracture. I had a brain bleed. I lost my taste, my smelling, my equilibrium. And what they found when they took me to the emergency room was that I had literally survived the fall by 1/2 inch because that was how much I missed my brainstem by.
Dang. That is insane.
Yeah.
Did you fully recover from that one?
For the most part. I still do cranial sacral therapy. It's taken a lot. I still have vertigo sometimes and things like that. But for the most part, I have really recovered. And so with that, I was in the hospital for about 10 days, but that ends up being what leads me to a very significant point in my life in January of 2012. So I was 12 when my grandfather had passed, and I knew he and I were still communicating. I would share it with my mom, and she would say, well, that's what you think he would say if he was here. So in 2012, the end of it, my son Josh, who was 5 years old at the time, started getting depressed because he said he hadn't done anything to help me. He had tried to call 911. We believed his call didn't go through. My older daughter, who was 8, her call went through. And so the end of January, my grandfather, who had transitioned, passed away when I was 12 years old, came through to me in my first huge mediumship visit since my head injury. He talked about my accident. He talked about my son. They've never walked this earth at the same time. He told me he's good with electronics, Michelle. You need to get the 911 recording. There's something on there you should know. And I didn't even know I could get the 911 recording at that point in time. So I go down and I order it. Takes a couple weeks to come in, and I put it in to play it when I get it. And I hear them say, 911, what's your emergency? And in that moment, I hear Josh's little broken voice say, Sophie, what do I say? And he lays the phone down. He had called right when the trauma happened. For the next minute and a half, 911 tries to get their attention. You can hear the kids talking in the background. He says, I'm going to push the panic alarm on the house. My daughter says, hold on, let me try calling 911. She hangs up the phone, dials 911, and her call's the second call to go through.
Whoa.
So when he came home from kindergarten that day, I said to him, I said, Josh, your call went through. Help was coming. And it was like I lifted this 10,000-pound weight off this little boy's shoulder with information that I humanly did not know, but my grandpa knew.
Crazy. And he called before you fell off, you said?
He called right after I fell off. But he called right as the trauma had happened.
Wow.
So he was right on it. And because the trauma was so intense at that moment, had actually laid the phone down after he said, what do I say? And they had forgotten the call went through.
Crazy. Have you seen any abilities in your kids?
I have. And it makes me so excited.
Yeah, it's genetic, right? It passes down.
Yeah, I think it's genetic. I think it's also included in our soul family because I believe in pre-life planning and that we have soul families. So I think that souls will choose to come in for certain lessons. And obviously our DNA does play somewhat of a role in it. So you would want it in the DNA line also.
Right. I've been looking into that soul planning stuff. It makes a lot of sense, actually.
It does. It does. So what we know is that we have about maybe 200 souls in a soul family group. Now, we can incarnate with other souls if we want to, but we tend to have like our favorites, just like on planet Earth. We have the people we like to hang out with the most, right? And so what we'll do is we will decide before we come into this earthly realm, like what lessons do we want to learn? What missions do we want to have? What do we want to experience while we're here? And it's a lot like a video game. We pick the other players on our team. We say, you're going to play this role and this role. And we pick our DNA, so we know what DNA line we're coming into. So you know if you have a family that might fight depression or breast cancer or ALS. Now, none of those are etched in stone that they will happen, but you know what kind of lineage you're picking.
Wow, that's crazy. So you know kind of what diseases you're prone to.
You do. And what I've understood from spirit with that is because we have our body, mind, spirit connection, you do have that propensity for something to come up, but depending on your mind and spirit, you can also bypass it. It's not usually etched in stone.
I love that. I want to talk about heaven and hell. So when you had these near-death experiences, did you see any glimpses of that?
Yeah, I felt a lot of the glimpses of heaven, and I felt how close I was. There was never a tunnel of light that came for me. I just blinked and I was there. I've never connected with the hellish energy. I've heard near-death experiencers once in a while talk about it. But what I find from them is when they're talking about it, they're usually then talking about how the hand came in and saved them, or the light appeared and they stepped into the light. So what I believe about that negative energy is it does exist to some extent. I don't know that I want to call it hell, but there's a lower dimensional energy that I would say. However, if that's where you find yourself, you can always move out of it into the light.
Yeah, that's where some ghosts reside, right? Like the hauntings.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's an in-between space.
Yeah. I found out my house was haunted recently.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you have it cleansed?
Well, it was my childhood house I grew up in.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if she cleansed it, but I used to have nightmares all the time.
Right.
I had sleep paralysis once. I was getting choked out, and it makes a lot of sense that house was haunted.
Yeah, absolutely. So it could have either been somebody who had lived in that house before you, the vibrational energy. So think of everything as vibration and frequency, right? If you turn on the country music station to 107, they are perfectly energetically and frequently aligned. You're not going to accidentally end up on the rap station if you go to that one, right? So when we think about our humanness, our house, the land, wherever we are, there's a frequency or an energy that everything is vibrating with. So there will be areas that can pull in a lower energy.
Wow. So does that mean certain cities and areas are better to live at?
Absolutely. And some people resonate and do better and thrive more in certain cities than they would in others.
So what are some high vibrational cities and areas in the U.S.?
That are great vibe? Yeah, exactly. So I always think the more you can get with nature around you. I love Sedona. I love, areas like that where you have the nature, very high vibe, high energy vortexes, but also the oceans. So a lot of coastal cities, San Diego, there are different places that we can go. Now, it also depends on the individual, right? Because some people are more mountains or more ocean or whatever that looks like. I'm in Phoenix. So, I feel like Phoenix actually, although it's such a big city, it truly has a high vibration because it's that whole, think about even the symbolism, the phoenix rising, right? Yeah. There's a vibration that goes with that energy.
I love that. Yeah, I engaged in Sedona.
Oh, you did?
Felt so good there.
Yes.
Yeah, the energy there it's hard to explain.
Yeah, if you haven't been there, once you get there, you literally can just feel the peace come over you.
Yeah, I wonder what it is, because they do say it has vortexes there.
It does. And what I find is that they're all good energies, and depending what I know from my shaman friends there, depending on what you're working on, you would want to go to different vortexes. So if you want to go to a heart expanding one or a mind expanding one or one to work on childhood issues, there are different places you would go.
That's interesting. Next time I go there, I'll look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to activate my third eye more.
Oh, absolutely. That is the place to do it.
Yeah. Do you do those ceremonies with the shamans and stuff?
You know what? I haven't. I've done a lot of breath work with some shaman, and I get readings from them, or I connect with them for mentoring in some ways, because I'm, even though I have a lot of abilities myself, I'm always going to be the student too. And everyone brings different things into our life that we can learn from.
Absolutely. I love that. Always learning.
Always learning. You can be both the student and the teacher.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of readings for people?
I do a lot of readings for people. I've done thousands of readings over the years.
Wow.
And it's literally my passion. It never feels like work. I get to connect with their loved ones, their angels, their life guides, psychic information, what's coming in for them, and some medical intuition too.
Do you see a lot of common themes within these readings?
You know what? I do, especially when we really talk about like our connection to our loved ones in spirit, because a lot of times we all have challenges with someone in our family or
Right.
someone who's transitioned, right? And what I really find is that from that heavenly realm, they are wanting to come in and heal the wound that you might have. Now, some clients are not open to that. Like sometimes I'll have someone and I'll be like, I have your mom here. And they're, anyone but my mom. That's the last person I wanted to talk to.
Dang.
And I'll say, okay, but if you stay open, those are usually the most healing messages.
Right.
If you give yourself permission to receive and your mom comes in and says to you, I'm sorry, I was a broken human. I did the best I could. I see your beauty and I love you unconditionally now. And you let that sink in, it'll change your life.
Yeah, that's relatable because my dad cut off his parents and they never rekindled before his parents passed. So I always wondered if they did in the afterlife.
Absolutely.
I hope so.
Yeah, they did. And not only that, though, usually when we have people that are getting ready to transition, heaven knows, just like how I say with that first near-death experience that my grandma and my angel were waiting for me, heaven's psychic, it knows. And so what they will start doing is bringing in the loved ones who will be there to greet that person when they're getting ready to transition.
Got it. So how does time work in that realm? Because they're eventually going to become new human bodies, right? They're going to transition into another body.
Right. They'll have that opportunity. So I don't believe we're ever forced to reincarnate. I think pick your favorite vacation spot. After you've been there about 200 years, you're going to be saying, like, is there another restaurant we could try? Is there a new beach? Like, where can we go now, right? So what happens is we get to choose. We're never forced to come back. We get to choose. And after a while, we're going to want to go learn new lessons. And so the way that that works, I like to compare our soul to a sun. So think of all of the rays of light on a sun. Each lifetime that you've had is a new ray of light on that sun. So the version of you that existed 2,000 years ago still exists, as well as this version today. The soul just creates a new ray of light.
That's cool. But can you still talk to them even like 10, 20 years later?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I had a friend whose dad passed, and he came through that morning and told me before she had even called.
Wow.
Yes. So sometimes we'll hear people say, some mediums will say that you need to wait 6 months or you need to wait a year. What I have found is that doesn't seem to be true on the heavenly side of it. That is true for the person. Some people need to wait. Some people are ready immediately. Some people are never ready. So it's really more based on the human individual than the soul.
Right. Is there a cleansing process for really damaged lifetimes?
There is. So what I have found, because my life partner transitioned by and what I have found, because this has taken me into it in a whole nother level. He's the first person super close to me that I've had to work with that through. I've had many clients over the years that have had to work through that. But what I found with him is they are absolutely still greeted with that love and light and compassion, but they might not feel ready to go all the way in. So let's talk about this heavenly realm as a house or a home. So he showed up at the door. He was welcomed. They brought him comfort and love. And he might have said, I'm not quite ready to go to the living room yet. I think I just want to sit here and acclimate here to this love and this healing energy. And then I'll take the next step in and go further.
Interesting. Yeah, when my dad passed, because he passed through suicide also, I would have these dreams, and it felt like I was in his dreams. Weird, right?
Yeah, and yet you were probably in his consciousness, is what I think. So you were. Could you mind? Was he experiencing learning, growth?
So he grew up on a farm, and there was one dream I remember vividly, like just me being there and me seeing him fight with his parents.
Okay.
Like that was one of them. There was another one where we were in a dark cave exploring with me and his other sons.
Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes when we because we talk about a life review when we transition. So I've never gotten to see any of mine. But what I know is the life review isn't that someone is judging us or that, you're getting in trouble for doing it wrong. What it's really about is our soul is kind of going through this time and saying, oh, I see that. I could have learned this. I could have taken a right turn here instead of a left. So we are the ones who are just analyzing it, if you want to call it that, ourselves. It actually feels like to me that what you actually might have witnessed was part of his life review that he was ready to look at.
Wow. I could see that because they say your life flashes before your eyes. You see all your memories, right before you die.
Well, it depends on the soul. So if somebody's ready for that, they will. And other times you might get to that heavenly realm. And in our earth time, it could be 10 years before you have your life review. It depends on, heaven is always about love and compassion. And that's what you're going to be greeted with. So if you are ready to have an instant life review, they'll show it to you. If you need 10 years, whatever that looks like in the heavenly realm, to be ready to start taking pieces of it in, they will wait.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm discovering my mother and I might be soulmates.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all because our soulmates come in many forms. They're not just like lovers. We think of it as always being a lover, right? Soulmates can be kids, parents, friends, sisters. Soulmate, that's a very broad title, but absolutely. And most likely you and your mom have had multiple lifetimes before.
Yeah, that surprised me when one psychic told me because we got a lot of attention growing up. So I didn't know if that was a common thing for soulmates.
Yeah, I think it is. But I would also say with you and your mom, you've probably played other roles. You could have been brothers. You could have been sisters in a lifetime. You could have been the mother in another lifetime.
Wow, that's crazy to think about.
I know.
Yeah.
But our soul isn't, our soul will take whatever role we want to learn and express the most. So your soul's been female just like mine's been male.
Interesting. What about animals?
Oh, I love animals. Okay, so as far as their souls are making a choice to be here with us on planet Earth. And we do have soulmate animals. So a lot of times people will have their favorite horse or dog or cat or whatever this is, right?
Yeah.
But that would be created in the soul plan or the agreement before our soul came to life in this human form, where we were saying, okay, at this point in my time, I'm going to need a dog so that I can go home and feel unconditional love or whatever this is. And so our animals actually choose to be here with us.
And that's crazy to think about because we think as humans, we're picking the animal.
Right. And they picked us before we got here.
Yeah, just like our parents, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So crazy.
Well, you chose your parents. I chose my parents.
Nuts.
I know. And I understand the challenges of wrapping our human head around this because we would say, some people, why would I pick an abusive family?
Yeah.
And the reason really is this, because on the soul level, when we think of the scope of eternity, this whole lifetime is the blink of an eye. But we can dive into planet Earth and we can learn so much so quickly here. In 100 years, there's so much contrast. You know that. Turn on the news or just look around, drive down the street, right? There's contrast everywhere. And so for our soul, which is ever evolving, we never stop evolving. There's not going to be a day that you or I get there and we're like, okay, now we're really going to just do nothing for eternity. We're always going to evolve and grow. Our soul says, I am excited to go take this opportunity and play in the magic of life and learn these lessons, knowing this is a temporary, almost simulation.
How far back have you seen our souls go?
Oh my gosh. Souls can be billions of years old.
Billions?
Billions.
Whoa. So humans have been around that long?
Well, we don't always just incarnate on planet Earth.
Okay.
Right? There are other dimensions and other planets.
Right.
And your soul's not always human. We're being human right now in this place and time. But most souls have been to other dimensions and other planets.
Holy crap. Because they taught us growing up, humans are like, what, 10,000 years old? Something?
Right, yeah. Something along those lines, right? Which I don't find that to be true either, in my knowledge with spirit.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be hard to fathom that.
Oh, correct.
Like, it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
There's paintings of us with dinosaurs on, like, stone walls.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that might have been the last time we were integrated onto the planet, but I don't think that was the first time.
So we came here from another system.
It's very possible. It is very possible that the missing link is not going to be found in the DNA that's right here on this planet.
Yeah.
I think it's very possible.
I've heard other past life experts talk about a red planet. Has that come across you in any way?
I have seen it when I've been working with people on their past lives.
Wow. So there's something there.
Yeah.
Red planet with advanced technology.
Absolutely. And even when we talk about Atlantis or Lemuria or something like that, we're talking about advanced civilizations.
Have you ever had someone from Atlantis or one of those civilizations?
I've connected with other souls that are here now that have had lifetimes in those.
Wow. That's cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I had Mateus De Stefano on, and he was talking about that.
Yes.
So fascinating.
It's amazing. And then even when you have these memories, humans have been on planet Earth so much longer than 10,000 years or whatever.
Yeah. They seem to be much more spiritually advanced in those civilizations.
I think they were, because I think they were coming from the oneness, right? So here's the thing about planet Earth. It's amazing because of the contrast. This is no soul that you see on planet Earth right now is a newbie soul. They have all been around and they're old souls. This is very challenging. This would be like going into the Super Bowl, never playing football before. And you're just going to walk on the field, right? That's not how this works. The souls that are here have had other lifetimes and other dimensions and other planets. And so they're actually going to be old souls. We also have souls lined up waiting for their opportunity to come here to planet Earth.
So why do you think there's no new ones coming in right now?
There are new souls coming in. There are souls that have never been here before that are bringing their wisdom from other planets or dimensions to help us upgrade to our next level.
Got it. That's cool. That's exciting, right?
Yes, it's so exciting.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that. Have you done any like astral travel or remote viewing?
You know what? I have. I've done both, yes. And usually it's spontaneous. So it's nothing that I've ever tried to do or set my intention to do. But I will wake up in the morning and I can remember who I was with once in a while and exactly astral travel even to other dimensions.
Whoa. How does that work?
So what I have found is that at night when we're sleeping, all of our souls are connected to that heavenly realm even more. Our body's resting, but our soul is still learning, growing, and exploring. So when we're talking about astral travel and things like that, what we're really doing is we're remembering what our soul was doing while our humanness was sleeping.
Wow. So when we're sleeping, we're living another life, basically.
Yeah, you're exploring. Your soul never needs, right? Your soul doesn't need food, water, medicine, exercise, any of the things that our humanness needs. And so while our bodies are resting to recover, our soul isn't done learning and exploring and adventuring.
Yeah. I've always had a weird theory on dreaming and how it was another dimension. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's so little known about dreaming.
Right.
Like no one really talks about it.
Right. And it's really rare for people to ever have the same dream. Once in a while, I'll hear that from clients, but usually it's in connection with a loved one who passed, and they will all have 3 people in the same family say, Monday night, we all dreamt about Dad coming in his yellow shirt, and he told us all exactly the same thing. So for me, that's like a visit that they had for their loved one, and he made that happen so they would all have this conversation and know that it was real. But most dreams, you don't hear about people having the same dreams. We might say, I had a dream I was flying, you had a dream you were flying, but it was probably in a different location. It had a different launching point. There were other things happening.
Yeah. There's theories that some people can dream hop.
I believe that.
That'd be crazy.
I know. That would be amazing.
That'd be fun if used in the right way. But
yeah,
you don't want to get too personal with it.
Right. That's for sure.
You also had 2 shared death experiences.
I did.
What happened there?
Okay, so the first one was with my dog a few years ago. She had lymphoma, and we had done everything we could, so it was time to have her euthanized. And I had the vet come to the house to do it, which was so peaceful and beautiful to be able to do it that way.
Yeah.
That morning, I was on the ground next to her in my pajamas, crying, not being a medium, being a dog owner who loved my family member. And what happened was the vet administered the anesthesia. And as I was hugging her and petting her and crying, I felt her soul gently disconnect from her body. And it was almost like a feather on the wind. It was so gentle. And then I heard my mom, who had passed a couple years before, say to me, I have her now. About 45 seconds later, the vet said her heart has stopped. So that was my first shared death experience. The second one just happened in January. And with this, I was getting my hair done. I was at the salon. My lady comes back to get me from under the dryer, and she says, oh my gosh, Michelle, we just had to call 911. There's a man passed out up front. And as I'm walking up there, I can feel his soul around me. It was like it was circling me.
Wow.
And so I'm walking up there, and I hear fentanyl overdose. And that spirit talking. And I look out the window, and as soon as I look out the window, the police officer's pulling up. So there's nothing for me to do, but I can feel him hovering around me. So I start calling in the angels, the light, life guides, really giving them all, not just for him, but for the first responders, for anyone who's involved with this trauma that's happening. But at that point in time, his soul and mine linked in. So I go back to, and I can see the ambulance has pulled up. They're starting to work on him. I go back, I sit in her chair, and I can feel, I'm not even visually able to see this anymore. I can feel them load him in the ambulance. I can feel the ambulance start driving, and I can feel him coding, and that they are using the paddles on him, and that I feel his soul. He was a little confused. And I just am calling in the light and praying for them all. And the next thing I know, we disconnect, and he connects into the light.
Whoa. That's crazy. Do you think you were maybe soulmates with him or something?
You know what I think? So very often, I think his soul was not planning on passing that day. I really think it was an accidental overdose. And so he was maybe a little confused in the moment. And he saw my light, and he knew I would be able to help him. Or his guides and angels were like, hey, go see her. She's right here. She can give you direction. And so I think that's what happened.
Wow, that's interesting, because there are theories that your death date is kind of programmed. But with that case, that would kind of disprove that, right?
Yeah, I think that would. Or, I mean, it's an interesting way. Or we could say that was programmed 200 years ago and it just came to fruition.
Yeah.
You could see that either way.
It's a tricky argument, because I don't want to live with that thought that it's already programmed.
So here's the thing. I don't believe it is. And this is what Spirit has said to me, okay? When we come to planet Earth, we do have free will. So we have free will on the soul level. None of us are forced to be here. But we also have free will on the human level. So what happens is, think of it as mazes. We have maze A, maze B, maze C. If we're going to play really human, we get in maze A, and the only options are going to be in maze A, right? Or maze B or maze C. But when we connect to who we really are, which is this all-encompassing, powerful, beautiful soul, we raise out of the maze, and there's more free will there. So now we can say, I'm going to take part of A, part of B, and part of C, and create my own destiny.
I love it. Yeah, I'd rather live like that.
Yeah, you already are.
Yeah, I hope so. Any projects you're working on or anything fun?
Yeah, well, I've got some classes coming out right now. I've got one that's coming out about soul agreements that's already pre-recorded. And then I have one that I'm going to be doing about connecting with your life guides in October. I've got some conferences coming up where I'm going to be at the IANS conference speaking and presenting. That's the International Association of Near-Death Studies. So,
wow.
Yes.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Okay, well, come join us. It's in Phoenix the end of August.
Yeah,
you would love it.
No, I'm into all this stuff, so I'll definitely try to make it out there.
Yeah, it's amazing, because what we have are hundreds of people who've had near-death experiences. We have the scientific researchers coming in talking about it. And it's just this great feeling of being with family.
I love it. Michelle, it's been so fun. Where can people find you?
At my website, Michelle Clare, CLARE.net. I've really enjoyed our time together.
Yeah, same. We'll link it below. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thanks for watching, guys. See you tomorrow.